Stabilization wedges, 8 ways to cut carbon.
This wedge would be achieved if the world's cars were cut in half. Such a reduction would be a success if more use of mass transit and communications became electronic instead of face-to-face. We chose this wedge because it's cost efficient and a lot of cities rely on public transportation. This will help cut down on carbon emissions.
Our second wedge is efficiency electricity. By doing this, the world's current coal-based electricity will be doubled in efficiency and it would save the wedge worth of carbon emissions. We chose this wedge because we want to preserve electricity.
When coal is heated and combined with steam and air or oxygen, carbon monoxide and hydrogen are released and can be processed to make a liquid fuel called a synfuel. Coal-based synfuels result in nearly twice the carbon emissions of petroleum-derived fuels, since large amounts of excess carbon are released during the conversion of coal into liquid fuel. If we captured CO2 emissions for over 50 years, it would be the same as capturing the CO2 emissions from 180 coal to synfuel facilities. We chose this wedge because synfuels release a lot of harmful gases, and by capturing the gases, we can help cut down on carbon emissions.
Because of the lower carbon content of natural gas and higher efficiencies of natural gas plants, producing electricity with natural gas results in only about half the emissions of coal. By doing this wedge, it would require about 1 billion watt natural gas plants, displacing similar coal electric plants, and it is also cost efficient. We chose this wedge because we wanted to stop the use of tons of coal being burned at once.
Wind currently produces less than 1% of the total global electricity, but wind electricity is growing at a rate of about 30% per year. To increase the capacity, this would require the deployment of about 1 million large windmills, or roughly the size of Germany. We chose this wedge because wind is a renewable energy source and it'll help cut down on carbon emissions.
Photovoltaic, or PV, cells convert sunlight to electricity, providing a source of CO2-free and renewable energy. The land demand for solar is less than with other renewables, but installing a wedge worth of PV would still require arrays with an area of 20,000 kilometers. The combined area of the arrays would cover an area of the size of the U.S. state of New Jersey, or about 12 times the size of London metropolitan area. The major drawback of doing this wedge is PV electricity is very expensive. We chose this wedge because solar energy would be very useful and the sun is very renewable.
To produce hydrogen with wind energy, electricity generated by wind turbines is used in the electrolysis, a process that liberates hydrogen from water. Wind hydrogen displacing vehicle fuel is only about half as efficient at reducing carbon emissions as wind electricity displacing coal electricity. And 2 million rather than 1 million windmills would be needed for one wedge of emissions reduction. The area needed is about the size of France. We chose this wedge because it may be costly, but it produces no carbon dioxide at all.
Conversion of natural vegetation to cropland reduces soil carbon content by 1/2 to 1/3. However, soil carbon laws can be reversed by agricultural practices that build up carbon in its soils, such as reducing the period of bare fallow, planting cover crops, and reducing aeration of the soil. A wedge of emissions savings could be achieved by applying carbon management strategies to all the world's existing agricultural soils. We chose this wedge because a lot of countries rely on farming, and by doing soil storage, it would save a lot of soil that the farmers are using. Taxpayers/consumers would be about a 3 or average because they would be putting money into the wedge, but they would also be getting something in return in their favor. Energy companies would approve very of these wedges because they can expand their companies and will also be the suppliers of the wedges.
Environmental groups highly approve this because it cuts carbon emissions by 1 billion tons per year per wedge.
Manufacturers won't be as satisfied because they have to find an alternative energy for their supplies that they make.
Industrialized country governments would not be happy with these wedges because They have to use a new energy source for their already established energy.
Developing country governments would highly recommend our wedges because they get brand new eco-friendly energy, and as their country develops, they could eventually adapt their own energy sources.